these others came from another source. Word for father, father. Now, here again is our problem. Was Gothic the parent of these other languages? Was it the parent? No. Because it was so closely related to time and space, it was decided that Gothic was only an older brother. And it consequently gave us very good material to reconstruct now a language which we can call Proto-Germanic, which would date from about 1 AD. And here is how it was reconstructed, systematically, in correspondences. In other words, the word for tooth must have been something like tan. It had an ending on it because we don't know exactly what the ending was. We leave a little dash there. Hundes is pretty close to the form it must have been. We will put the ending right on there. And motor was the word. It must have sounded quite like that. Not exactly, of course, but quite like that. Motor and father. This particular reconstruction, these particular reconstructions, and please notice that little asterisk means they have never been found in any text. We are reconstructing systematically from the material we have here formulas, if you will, that will account for all of the languages that have descended from this particular period. Now, having done this, actually what we have done, if you will, is to place now a reconstructed Proto-Germanic, which in time will now compare with Latin and Greek around 1 AD. Incidentally, I'd like to show you a page of the Gothic Bible. It's one of the most beautiful manuscripts in the world. It's called the Codex Argentius. It's done on purple vellum with silver letters. And here is that part from the beginning of the parable on the prodigal son. Mane suns aitha quan sununs, says the Gothic. A certain man had 2 sons, is the way it starts. Looking at these letters, you will see that they look, some of them look quite like Latin letters, and some of them, like this one, for instance, are obviously from the Greek alphabet. In other words, this particular alphabet that Ulfilas used is from both the Latin and the Greek alphabet. And I think you'll agree that this is a very nice-looking page. However, we get back to our problem. Gothic was then seen to be an older brother, and what we now had to do was to take our reconstructed Proto-Germanic with the help of Gothic, and now compare that reconstructed Proto-Germanic with the actual text that we had of Latin and Greek, all at about the same time. Now, to help in this particular problem, just as Gothic helped out in the problem of reconstructed Proto-Germanic, there was a very, very old language that was found in India called Sanskrit. And it was discovered, at least as far as the West was concerned, when the English went into the subcontinent of India. And because Sanskrit, which was actually preserved in texts carefully, as it had been spoken 1,000 years before Christ, it was believed that Sanskrit, because of its extreme age, might have been the parent of all of the other languages that we were concerned about. But then it was found that was not the situation. And in fact, the man who really first made the statement, that is the statement that we now follow today, was a man named Sir William Jones, one of the British who was out there in India, who in 1786 made the following and wrote the following observation. Sanskrit, in relation to Greek and Latin, bears a stronger affinity both in the roots of verbs and in the forms of grammar than could possibly have been produced by accident. So strong, indeed, that no philologer, that's what they call the language at that time, could examine them all three without believing them to have sprung from some common source, which perhaps no longer exists. There is a similar reason, though not quite so forcible, for supposing that both the Gothic and the Celtic, though blended with a very different idiom, had the same origin with the Sanskrit. In other words, Sanskrit appears now not the daddy, but the older brother. And scholars followed this particular suggestion, and then they knew what they had to do was to put Sanskrit with all of the other languages and compare them. And here is again how they did it, systematically. Here are our words tooth, mother, and father again, and we've added to this one the word ten. Again, numerals are very good for this kind of purpose. Latin, dames, dentist, nominative, and the genitive. Now notice the Greek. Here is the Greek form for the genitive. The nominative is hodus, but hodontas. Notice the O in the stem as against the E. Sanskrit dan danta. And what scholars then did was, on the basis of the E and the O, reconstruct for the parent language, now called reconstructed Proto-Indo-European, going back in time to about 2500 BC. Forms of dent, dialect forms which may well have been different in different dialects with an O in the stem or an E in the stem. Take this word for father, for instance. This is a rather interesting one. Latin shows pater with a long mark here.